Yeah, let the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the pilot episode of Awesome People Doing Awesome Things. I'm Joe Staszak, your host, and joined with me right now, my former partner at 97.5, the Fanatic, Matt Lombardo. You are awesome, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Honored to be the first awesome person, supposedly, doing an awesome thing in the awesome sunshine of the Valley of the Sun.
Well, we did see Dak Prescott walk by us. You were gonna get bumped, but I said, nah, come on, Matty Ice is my boy here. Matty Ice is my boy. So how you doing, man? Last time I guess we were seen publicly, or the last time we did a show together was February of 17.
Wow.
That's 5 years ago. Last time I checked. Is that right?
5 years.
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Wow, 6 years ago. Okay, so people want to know because we pop up once in a while on Facebook, and I keep teasing a reunion podcast. Well, here you go, folks. Tell me what you've been doing since.
Yeah, you know what? It's been a lot of fun. It's been a bit of a journey, and I believe that our final show together at 97.5 was my final show at 97.5.
It was. I popped in on it.
You did, and
Yeah,
I had no idea it was coming. I think that the producer and you concocted that surprise towards the end, and it made the show that much more memorable. But after that, got hired full-time to cover the Eagles at NJ.com, and my first full-time year on the beat, they go to the Super Bowl.
How great was that?
They
You
beat
were
the
at
New
the
England
Super Bowl
Patriots.
covering your team, your town, the team you grew up with, the Eagles,
Yeah.
back in 17. How much fun was that?
Yeah, that was Super Bowl II for me. This is Super Bowl
II.
V.
Wow, okay.
And what was really great and really special about that game and that week was, people who follow my work, they know that I really don't have much allegiance or rooting interest in the NFL, but my father is still a diehard Eagles fan.
Of course.
So to me, the proudest moment of my career personally was the fact that he bought a ticket to the Super Bowl. He flew out on Thursday night. Wouldn't have done it if I wasn't out there, but I got to take him to a couple Super Bowl parties. We did the Super Bowl experience on Saturday.
That's really cool.
He went to the game, and when
He got to go to the game.
he got to go to the game, and he tells the story all the time that when Brandon Graham strip sacked Tom Brady, he was crying like a baby, and he looked to his left, and there was somebody about his age, and he was crying, and he looked to his right, and there were people crying there.
Wow.
And just being able to give that moment, that experience to my dad made me feel pretty fulfilled. And then from there, the next year, actually, I got promoted to cover the Giants, which people might snicker, but the New York Giants is the biggest beat at NJ.com,
right?
New York market and all that good stuff. So I covered the Giants for a handful of years, went on to a different outlet, and in July of this year, I got hired by Heavy.com as their senior NFL reporter / insider. So a lot of fun times covering the league for Heavy.com. And here we are in Phoenix getting ready for another Super Bowl with the Eagles in it.
Fantastic. We won't go into details. We had a lot of fun last night hanging out in Old Town Scottsdale last night, catching up and doing the deal, catching the lay of the land. We'll get to football in a minute, but so tell me about your experience with Heavy.com. And now you're not just covering a specific team, right?
Right.
And you're doing a lot of videos, I see, which I think that you call, you're a great writer, but you're very good on the air. I saw your Sal Pal. But this is an opportunity for you to be self-serving and explain or put some other stuff.
Me?
You're very good at promoting, man. You are
Me?
a great self-promoter. So, hey, man, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you know what, Joe, thanks. Had an opportunity to sit down with Sal Paolantonio from the Eagles Hotel earlier this week leading into the game. Got 5 or 6 minutes with him just talking about the game, previewing the game, and Sal's really gracious with his time. He's always been kind of a mentor to me, but you can go and read that story at Heavy.com or check me out on Twitter at Matt Lombardo NFL. Really enlightening conversation, in my opinion, with Sal getting his thoughts on this game and the big storylines going into it. A few people spin a narrative as well as Sal does.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun and probably my big takeaway, other than this podcast of work that I've done this week. Which again, I feel honored to be the first supposedly awesome person on the Awesome People Doing Awesome Things podcast. But that was a lot of fun, and just big picture, landing at Heavy. I've never felt more professionally valued at any stage of my career. From the first conversation with their sports editor and later their NFL director and eventually the CEO of the company, they have a vision of how to succeed in a world where our business is really driven by social media and driving eyeballs to the social media page and ultimately driving revenue from page views and video views and all that. And it's been a lot of fun. All year wrote a a Monday morning quarterback style column each Monday off of the entire league. That was a lot of fun. That process was interesting. My Wednesday column, kind of going inside the NFL with the latest news and rumors and talking to sources. And now in my new role, it's both mostly on camera podcasts. And I think you're right, because as much as I enjoy the writing side of things and the finished product, I don't necessarily, Joe, love the labor of love of spending 8-9 hours writing a 5,000 word story when I can pick up the phone, talk to a source, bang out an enlightening 3-minute video, and it's in the world, and I go play with my kids.
Speaking of, you launched a Penn State website, which you graciously offered me a position. I write for you now, and I love doing it. But you're right, it's a process, and if you want to be good and detailed and fact check and do everything properly, it's hours of work. Whereas, you know, there's a lot of prep that goes into the videos too. But I get what you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. But let me just know a little bit about our history, in case you didn't know. It didn't start at the Fanatic. This guy I met at the Stanley Cup Finals in 2010, Flyers and Blackhawk. You were still in Westchester, I believe, as a student, and you ran the radio station there. Hustler, man, like I've never seen. Reminded me of a young, well, me. Running around, wanted to, you know, I think Paul Jolovitz introduced us, and then he wanted to hang and watch the stand-ups I did. And that was one of the highlights of my career, covering the Stanley Cup Finals. Also did the World Series in 2008. You know, then I was covering the Phillies in 2010 when they were in San Francisco, and I was doing hits for your radio station.
You were.
I was
you
so
came on the show.
I came on. I remember I was in right field, you know, a few feet from McCovey Cove when we were doing.
I remember that.
I remember that
afternoon drive in Westchester, PA, at a radio station that had to turn off at nighttime. So when the sun set, when the sun goes down, they legally had to play the national anthem, and that was it. Now you could, I think that was in the beginning of like streaming audio, so they could stream. So we'd walk over to the computer, and be like, "Oh, there's 2 people listening. We should keep going." But that was fun. I really enjoyed those conversations with you, and
it's good to look back at your roots and go, that's where I started, you know, the station that might have reached a couple students and like maybe 4 households. And to where you are now, you're covering your 5th Super Bowl. Amazing stuff, man. Amazing guest, amazing person, my man, Matt Lombardo. So let's talk football. So here we go. In 4 days, all the hype's over. No more pregame stories, no more talking about Patty Mahomes' high ankle sprain or Jalen Hurts' SC sprain. We're not talking about matchups.
The matchups are playing out.
Let's have at it. Let's see what's what. So, thoughts on the game first of all. General thoughts going into this game. It's a skinny line. Started as a pick. Early money went on the Eagles to a 2. Last time I checked, it was 1.5. I mean, basically pick the winner, but you think it could be even closer than that.
That's how I see it. I don't think that you're going to get a cover in this game, and we'll get into that. But I think the 2 big storylines, really 3. First and foremost, Joe, I think that this is a monumentally momentous Super Bowl for 2 reasons. One, it's the youngest quarterback matchup that the NFL has ever had in a Super Bowl. And it's the first time that you have 2 African-American quarterbacks in the Super Bowl, which I think is, for all of maybe the NFL's missteps over the years or delayed reaction to, you know, social justice and all that. This is a moment that I think the league should rightfully celebrate. And I think it might be a glimpse into the future of the quarterback position. And you have 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league this season. And in Jalen Hurts' case, in terms of up and coming, in Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. That to me is the big picture takeaway of this particular matchup. And the other one is, it's the Andy Reid Super Bowl.
Yes, it is.
Because it's not just, and Mike Tanier, my good friend from Football Outsiders, I think he put it best. This is Andy Reid against his legacy, because he built the Philadelphia Eagles into this perennial contender.
The culture. He's created that culture.
And beyond that, Jason Kelsey, drafted by Andy Reid, Brandon Graham, drafted by Andy Reid, Fletcher Cox, drafted by Andy Reid, Howie Roseman, a hand-picked salary cap department executive, and Andy Reid's fingerprints are still all over how that organization operates. And with a win, in my opinion, with the Kansas City Chiefs, another organization that he built from the ground up. Joe, if he wins this game, if Andy Reid wins this game, I think that he cements his status not only as the most influential coach of his era, the second most successful coach of his era, but I think you put him in the top 5 of coaches all time because there would be 2 rings, 2 different franchises. He handpicked Donovan McNabb, went to 4 conference title games and a Super Bowl with him, handpicked Patrick Mahomes. This would be a 2nd Super Bowl ring and 3 Super Bowl appearances with Mahomes. And the tree or the cactus, the branches of the cactus. You know, Doug Peterson wins a Super Bowl. John Harbaugh wins a Super Bowl. Ron Rivera goes to a Super Bowl. The sphere of influence of Andy Reid, I think he becomes the most influential coach of his ilk with another win. Those to me are the big stories.
I'm glad you said that because I'm gonna,
we're going to disagree because we always do on the air, which makes it great. Which makes it fun.
Right?
Made the
Come on, we
shows
can't
fun.
do a show together. We're gonna agree on stuff. That just has never
It's not our
happened.
style.
That never. So I don't disagree with you per se. The big word you introduced to the conversation is if he wins, okay. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Coach Reid here for this reason. This is 10th championship game he played in was a few weeks ago. Okay, that's a lot. That's 2 different teams.
In 21 years.
Yeah, this is his 4th Super Bowl appearance. That's a lot. If he loses, though, like I get it. If he wins, because I think there are a lot of coaches have 1 ring, just like a lot of players have 1 ring. I think the ones that separate themselves are the ones that have doubled that, at least double that. And with all the opportunities, he wins another. Then I think you can call this KC team the budding of a dynasty. Otherwise, I don't want to hear dynasty until I see 2 rings. So if he loses, what does that look like for his legacy? Now, granted, he's not done. Andy's gonna, until they carry him out of a church in a box, he's gonna coach probably. So what does it mean, or what does it look like? What does it do to his legacy if he loses the Super Bowl?
I think he would still be a Hall of Fame.
Definitely a Hall of
coach.
Famer, sure.
I think you delay any conversations about, carving in another face into the coaching Mount Rushmore.
Sure.
Because right now, I think that when you look at it, it's Lombardi, Belichick, Walsh, and Shula as your Mount Rushmore, with maybe somebody's getting up there, climbing up
You
on
like
the rock
Shula,
to
huh? Yeah.
most wins of all time,
I
multiple
know.
championships.
To me, he falls in the Dean Smith category
Little
of
bit.
okay, but
Right.
we won't deal with that.
But I think that with Reid, if he loses, maybe the guy climbing out to start carving the 5th head, maybe he comes back
Comes
down,
back and takes a union break.
takes a union.
Oh, sure, of course.
Because I don't think as long as Patrick Mahomes, the head coach of the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, as long as Andy Reid has Patrick Mahomes, he's going to coach the Chiefs, and they're going to be in the conversation along with the Cincinnati Bengals, along with the Buffalo Bills in the AFC. So he's going to get multiple bites of this apple. But I think that if he loses, it delays the conversation as far as his legacy, at least in my opinion. But a win, I think it goes a long way to cementing that status.
And you can't overlook the fact that you said that he's had a big hand in building these teams. LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson, and 2 guys that he brought in, made that team that made the run in 2009. Actually, in Glendale, lost to Kurt Warner and the Cardinals that year in an NFC title game. But he built the Chiefs. They were 2-14 when he got here.
Yeah.
Immediately turned him around with no quarterback. Okay, so Alex Smith was what he was. I think Andy realized we're not going further. Brilliant move, go up 17 spots to take Patrick Mahomes. And, a lot of folks had never heard of Patrick Mahomes, but I mean, gifted and blessed and whatever you want to call him. And Andy's great with quarterbacks. We know that. And I think he's a very good offensive coach. I think he's a very good coach, period. So let's talk about this game, because pound for pound, matchup for matchup, if you ask me of the 22 starters, I think I would give a check in the box. I won't go over each name individually, but maybe 14 or 15. I'd say Eagles, 7 Chiefs. I will also give the Chiefs the kicker and punter. It's close though. I think Elliott's done a nice job. They've had some problems punting recently. But the elephant that's not exactly in the room, Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Hurts, both MVP candidates this year, both had phenomenal years. There's Patrick Mahomes and there's Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts kind of burst onto the scene this year, whereas Patrick Mahomes, some people are talking, well, he's the greatest living quarterback. Oh, that's fine. Call him whatever you want. He's dangerous. Can they overcome the inferiority, not by a whole lot, but the defensive line, the offensive line? Games are won in the trenches. Andy Reid will be the first to tell you that he always builds from the inside out. Can Patrick Mahomes overcome that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you watch Patrick Mahomes and you watch what he did in that conference championship game on a bum ankle against the Bengals, it's a 60-minute game against Patrick Mahomes, and you have to cover every blade of grass for 60 minutes against him. It's just the reality of the situation. And he need to play an almost perfect game. I'd almost make the argument, Joe, that the Chiefs need Patrick Mahomes to have a legendary performance in order to win this game.
Signature game.
A signature game from Patrick Mahomes to beat the Eagles. And I think he's going to need that kind of performance. And I don't think Kansas City can overcome a game where maybe Patrick Mahomes throws an interception in the red zone before halftime, or maybe early in the fourth quarter, Hassan Reddick strip sacks him and the Eagles take over. And for as elite and elitely talented as Patrick Mahomes is in big games, he's prone to some of those mental lapses. We've seen it in conference title games before, and that's what I think separates these two with Jalen Hurts. You don't see him make those mistakes. He's not asked to do nearly as much because the Eagles run the ball so well. The offensive line might be the best offensive line that's been assembled in 10 or 15 years. But if Patrick Mahomes isn't the catalyst, I don't think the Chiefs are good enough to win this game. But if he goes out there and has a signature performance, Eagles are going to have their hands full.
What would be the strategy in terms of dealing with Patrick Mahomes? Because the Eagles, most of their sacks this year, maybe 40 of the 70 have been 4-man rushes. Don't need to necessarily blitz. And in that Super Bowl against Tampa Bay, 31-9 loss. I mean, they had obviously offensive line problems, and he was running for his
life. And I were playing offensive tackle.
Right?
Yeah.
I was terrible. So, and the score reflected that. But do you go after Patrick Mahomes, or do you say, hey, 4-man rush, drop 7 back, see what's what?
Yeah, I think you do. And I landed in Arizona thinking and falling into that narrative trap of that you can't blitz Patrick Mahomes because he's so good against the blitz. And the stats bear that out in his career. But this year, he's actually the Chiefs average 1 yard per play less on downs when he's blitzed versus when he's not. And Brandon Graham talked about how you have to take your shots, and the teams that don't go out and put pressure him, those are the teams that he carves up. The teams that play scared, as Graham put it, are the ones that get lit up by Patrick Mahomes. So I think you do blitz him, and I think you have the talent with Hassan Reddick on one side, and maybe you stand Brandon Graham up and rush him off the edge on the other side with a bigger front with Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh on the field at the same time. I think pressuring Mahomes with the blitz, I think it could actually be fruitful for Jonathan Gannon in that defense.
Let's talk about Jalen Hurts real quick, because I heard Chris Sims say this. None of this bothers me, but it might bother Eagles fans. He said Jalen Hurts probably has one of the easier quarterbacking jobs in the league, and he meant it in the way that they have other ways they can beat you. And in a way, if you look, he didn't have to do much against the Giants, 28-0 at the half.
Yep.
Didn't have to do much against the Niners, albeit they had their obviously catastrophic quarterback issues, but 31-7, 69-14, and Jalen Hurts barely, woke up.
Sure.
So how good does Jalen Hurts have to be in this game? Or does he just have to protect the football and play steady football? Or does he have to be spectacular?
Well, I think what's great about Jalen Hurts, what makes him a budding star, is I think he plays the game cerebrally above the shoulders in a way that Peyton Manning did. Because the Eagles ask him to set all of the run fits pre-snap. All of these RPOs are decisions that have to be made in split seconds after the snap based on your read. And I think that the Eagles are deep enough when you talk about the running game, when you talk about the offensive line play. I don't know that Jalen Hurts needs to go out and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, because here's what else makes him dangerous, Joe. He has something like 13 rushing. Again, the numbers are reversing. He has 13 passing touchdowns and 7 rushing touchdowns in the red zone. He's a dangerous weapon inside the 20-yard line, both with his legs and with his arm. And that's where I think the Eagles are going to make the hay in this Super Bowl, is inside the 20, because they're one of the better red zone offenses in the league. And Jalen Hurts takes advantage of those opportunities. So I don't know that Hurts needs to be the focal point, because I don't know that the Eagles need to have a focal point. If Miles Sanders rushes for 80 yards and a score, and Kenneth Gainwell rushes for a touchdown,
right,
maybe Jalen Hurts needs to only go out there and pass for 180 yards and 2 scores, and that might be enough.
Interesting. Can I get a prediction from you, or is that since you cover the NFL, or is that kosher?
Well, I'm gonna drop my official
My
prediction
man,
on the
my
side.
man.
I will tease it here. I'll give it here.
All right,
because
let's tease it.
after being on the pilot episode, I feel like I need to give you a gift here. I think the Eagles win this game 27-26.
So they don't cover, but
Don't
they win
cover.
the game. And I've had visions of this too. And I think we might have talked about it last night. You think maybe like a late drive and a
A late
field
drive?
goal.
I will call my shot here. I think I called it on my podcast that went live today as well. Jake Elliott, 38-yard field goal to wrap it up, 27-26 at the buzzer.
I've had visions of a late field goal. I had visions of a turnover late from the Patriots. I thought it'd be a fumble, but hey, it worked last time. So, all right, we shall see. I will give my prediction as the week goes on, but let's just say I'm leaning towards that prediction. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks for
Great
having me,
stuff,
man.
man. The pilot
Appreciate ya.
episode of Awesome People Doing Awesome Things. It's Matt Lombardo from heavy.com. Appreciate you watching, folks. You can catch this on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you can, give us a 5-star rating and share it with everyone you know. Good luck. Enjoy the game, folks, and we'll catch you next week.
Yeah, I got you. There's so many things popping up there.